The moment the bedroom door clicks shut, the toys come alive. That's the premise of the whole Toy Story world that has run on for 30 years. And Toy Story 5 opened last weekend on exactly that same promise. Woody worries, Buzz dreams, Jessie sings, all in the space between the kids setting them down and the kids coming back. The movies trust us with a secret. The toys that we love are most truly themselves when no one is watching. And this new film gives that premise a very current twist. The toy's rival is a screen, a glowing frog-shaped smart tablet named LilyPad, who shows up with loud opinions about what's best for their kid, Bonnie. Suddenly, the toys aren't the most exciting thing in the room anymore. And this time, the rival isn't a shinier toy, it's the screen that every modern kid already loves. The toys have to decide whether to keep showing up for a child whose attention has wandered to something brighter. If you've ever felt yourself lose someone's attention to a screen, maybe you already know a little bit of the ache that they're facing. Now here's why a children's movie can carry that much weight. Perhaps one of the reasons. What the toys do in the empty room is the same question that the gospel keeps asking about you and me. Who are you when no one is watching? Not the public version, shaped by whatever room that you're standing in, the quiet version, the way that you talk to the cashier when you're tired, what you scroll when the house is empty, whether you keep a small promise that nobody will ever check on. There's a self that shows up when there's no audience and no performance review, and that self is the one that the gospel keeps reaching for when it uses the word faithful. It's also the version that God already knows. We're in the second week of a series called The Gospel on Stage and Screen, where each Sunday we're setting a story that our town is already watching next to a story that Jesus told. Last week we opened with Willy Wonka's Golden Ticket and a parable about grace that seems unfair. If you'd like to catch one of these stories live this afternoon at 2 o'clock is the final performance of Wonka at the Opera House, and I'll be on that stage one more time as Mr. Bucket. Now, you don't need any church background to follow along to these stories in this series, and if you have ever found yourself wondering who you really are when no one is looking, then this story this morning is for you. Jesus sets his parable in exactly that kind of gap. A man hands his servants an enormous amount of money and then leaves on a long trip. No supervision. To one he gives 5 valuable coins, to another 2, to another 1. And the text says that he gave each according to that servant's ability. Now hold on to that particular line. The master knew each servant. He knew what each one would carry. The distribution was personal, not random. And don't let the word coin fool you into thinking small. Each of these was what the ancient world called a talent, not a single coin, but a weight of silver worth roughly 20 years of an ordinary worker's wages, close to $1 million in today's money. The servant handed a single one was handed a fortune, more than most people would have seen in a lifetime. So when the third servant buries it in the ground, he's hiding more than he could earn in 20 years of work. Now, nobody in this story was handed pocket change. Each of them was trusted with something staggering, and that lavish trust is the whole point. Which is why this was never a contest between the servants. The master isn't measuring one servant against the other. The 5-coin servant isn't the favorite. The 1-coin servant isn't the underdog. Woody spent a whole movie certain that the flashy new Buzz had replaced him in Andy's heart, and the point was that he never had. There was room for both. Each one is handed exactly what the master trusts that person to carry. And watch the accounting when he returns. The 5-coin servant brings back 10 and hears, "You've been faithful over a little." The 2-coin servant brings back 4 and hears the same words exactly. The returns are wildly different. The The praise is word for word identical. Whatever the master is celebrating, it's plainly not the size of the return. It's perhaps the faithful handling of what has been given. The third servant's failure wasn't that he'd come up short of his co-workers. It was perhaps that he had refused to touch what was his. By his own account, fear stopped him. Now, I knew you that you were a hard master, he says, so I was afraid, and I hid it in the ground. That isn't a financial mistake. It's a failure of trust. He couldn't believe the coin was a gift instead of a trap, so he buried it as if it were a threat. He kept it perfectly safe, the way a frightened toy hides in the closet, and it never became what it was made for. The parable won't let us play the comparison game. The question is never whether you out-earned anyone else. It's whether you trusted what was placed in your hands enough to put it to work. Now, in our tradition, everything that you're holding came to you as grace. Every ability, every season, every ordinary skill. John Wesley called it prevenient grace, that grace that goes before. Before you knew it was a gift, God was already placing it in your hands. And what you do with it across the long stretch is where Wesley says sanctifying grace shows up. The slow, patient work of God growing us as we actually use what we've been given. Not dramatic spiritual fireworks, the quiet, daily kind. A capacity used becomes a capacity that grows. It works the way a toy does. The one that is kept mint condition in its box never becomes what it was made for, while the one that gets played with and scuffed and carried everywhere and loved becomes more fully itself. The 2-coin servant didn't become the 5-coin servant. The 2-coin servant became more fully herself. And that becoming happens in the gap, in the long, unwatched stretches where most of life is actually lived. A marriage isn't tested in the dramatic moments. It's tested across 1,000 ordinary mornings when you choose to be kind and no one is filming it. Parenting isn't measured by the photographs we take. It's measured by the 3 a.m. wake-ups that you answered, the infant feedings and the sick child fevers year after year with no audience and no applause. The job no one writes a headline about, the friendship that quietly accumulates while no algorithm tracks it, the neighbor that you keep checking on long after anyone would say thank you anymore. That's the gap. That's where faithfulness actually happens, the same place that the toys keep choosing the kid even when that screen is brighter. The good news is that God's grace reached you first, before you ever produced a thing. Now, it's easy to read this parable as a distant day still ahead of us, a reckoning that we work toward, hoping that our small returns will hold up. But I want to invite you to read, if you read it that way long enough, and the faithfulness curdles into anxiety, the dread of the master's footsteps replacing the joy of the gift. It's the same dread that shadows the toys in those films, the fear of the day that the kid grows up and stops reaching for them. But Christ has already come, has already died and risen for you, and is coming again. Over the quiet, faithful little, Christ already speaks the Master's word. The promise that no one saw you keep, the phone call that you finally make, the 500th time that you forgive. The word isn't pending, it's already been spoken, faithful over a little. The toys never had to earn Andy's love. They had it from the very first morning that he carried Woody into the room. Not a love that you earn back, but a love that you knew all along and recognizes you the moment you turn around. We aren't carrying our coins to earn what we already have. We're carrying them because we're already loved. So here's the invitation for you today. And it doesn't depend on how long you've been following Jesus. You don't have to produce something impressive for God to call you faithful. You only have to take the little that's already in your hands and put it to work. So this week, I want to invite you to consider one small act of mercy that perhaps no one will ever document. The pot of coffee made before the house wakes up. The neighbor's lawn mowed without anyone being asked. The gentle word when a sharp one was right there. Faithfulness in the gap looks like ordinary kindness done quietly where God is the only one watching. And if any of this landed for you, you don't have to figure it all out this morning or have anything impressive to show for it. This is week 2 out of 4 in this particular series, so come back next Sunday. We'll set minions and monsters next to a story about Jesus that Jesus told about a God who leaves the 99 to go looking for the one. And I want to invite you to consider bringing someone with you to worship next week. In our parable for today, the master finally comes home and he doesn't reach for a calculator. He looks at the small, faithful work and says to each one the same thing, faithful over a little. It's the bedroom door opening again, the child back in the room reaching for the toy that kept showing up the whole time the room was empty. That word is already spoken over you, over every unwatched morning and every quiet kindness that no one else saw. So walk into the week knowing this, in the gaps where you were sure that no one could see, God has already called you faithful. Will you pray with me? Faithful God, you know the version of us no one else sees, and you call us faithful anyway. Meet us in the long, unwatched stretches. Give us courage to dig up what we've buried and put it to work, not to earn your love, but because we already have it. Send us out to be faithful in the small things through Christ your Son in the power of your Spirit. Amen. We now invite you to